All right, welcome back to The Few Show, everybody. My name is Bud, and I am Chief of Staff at Xfusion.io. I'm the co-host of The Few Show. I am excited to be joined today by my guest, Kirsti Tcherkoyan. Kirsti is CEO and founder of 2020 Insights, having built her career inside of tech startups, then spending time as an executive coach, and then returning to found her successful startups. Kirsti is out to make companies great places for everyone to work at. Kirsti, I am so excited to have you on the show. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Bud. So excited to be here.
Yes. So I want to start out because I think it's who you are and just a great place to start. We'll start talking about your 4 critical areas of belonging. So that is ensure everyone is seen for their unique contributions, ensure transparency and connection within their community, support employees in their daily work and career development, and create an organization in which people are connected to and are living into the values and purpose of their organization. Can we talk about those? Tell me how you came up with those and why they're important to you and what you do.
Sure. They came out of my work inside of startups and working with organizations over the course of my career. And because I get to see what makes a difference for the human beings on the other end, these 4 things are the things that sort of set companies apart. So if you think about the first one, seeing people for their unique contributions, imagine if you went to the office every day and said to someone, what are you really good at that we don't take advantage of? I can almost guarantee you that you are never going to have an employee that says, oh, you take advantage of everything that I'm great at, right?
Right.
All of us have things that are unsaid. And so it's important for us as employers to dig in, right? What are those things that people just do really well that we haven't slowed down long enough to recognize and or give them the opportunity to bring out? Because all of us want to go to work and bring that best part of ourselves. We don't want to not do that. So it's incumbent on the employer to really get the skills to draw those things out and use them. So that's where that comes from.
Yeah, and it sounds great, but it's harder than it sounds because the employee is not used to that. And they're like, well, are they really serious? And it really takes them a little while to realize that the employer is serious about what they're saying and say, well, they really do want to know what I'm good at and they really do want my feedback. So it really is incumbent upon the employer to prove that they're truly authentic in what they're saying and doing.
You know, but what brings up an issue for me that is we have a lot of people who are managing other people. And my experience is that we really haven't done manager training. People hear me say this all the time since last century. We haven't given people the skills they need to do that well. So even teaching managers how to intentionally and thoughtfully ask that question and then do something with it, in and of itself is a training issue, right? And so it's about thinking about the people who have those natural management skills being managers versus just promoting because they've been really good at their individual contributor job. So you're right. There are a lot of pieces that fit into that. And then you think about the next thing, which is transparency and connection in our community. If we think of our workplace as a community, which we tend to not to do thoughtfully, sharing that transparency is exactly what all the 4 generations of employees other than the baby boomers who are in the workplace today want. They want to see, right? They want to know, what's our business plan? How are we doing? How am I connected to it? How do I make a difference? And we've grown up with this sort of command and control way of managing, and it doesn't work anymore. So if a if a CEO is not comfortable saying, here's my job responsibilities, here are my goals, and sharing them with everyone, then for most of us, it's probably not a good match for us to work at that company, right? And to get that leadership team to a place where they are comfortable with that sort of transparency and willingness to make that connection, that's what's going to hold companies back. So transparency and connection to build the community that we are all a part of is critical.
Yeah. Yeah. I completely agree. When I was working in the oil field, as a night supervisor, I believed it was my job to learn what the day supervisor's job was and to teach my employees under me what my job was as well. So that at any point they could take my position and I could step up into the position of the people in front of me. There was a lot of people in the position in front of me that didn't want any part of that because they were afraid that if I stepped up to cover them, that they wouldn't have that position anymore. And I just thought that was such backwards thinking, because it didn't help them, it didn't help me, and it didn't help the company as a whole. It was a stagnant thought, and it just kept the company in a stagnant position. So yeah, I see what you're thinking. Yeah.
So the third area is daily work and career support, right? And it goes back to sort of that, how do we use people for their unique contributions and understand them? And how do we support people to be successful? So in your example that you just used, that is all about me, right? I'm fearful of somebody taking my job. And if we go back to what's the mission of the organization, why are we even in business? Then there's room for everyone to be successful, not just some, right? And so how do we, if you and I are peers and colleagues and I know what your goals are, I can help you achieve them simply by knowing what they are, right? And so I can say, hey, bud, what's going on today? I have extra time. Can I help you with anything? That's how we get to a place where everyone can be successful. And we build organizations where that's a part of our community. It's who we are. And that builds then to the connections and values of the company, right? If we literally just have the values on the wall, doesn't matter, right? They don't matter until we look at living out our values being as important as how productive we are. We're not going to make that leap. And so we literally need to be talking about core values as often as we're talking about productivity. And that's for us, that's just a part of the way that we do business with our clients is you have to have that conversation on an ongoing basis. Most companies, just by habit, only talk about those core values when we're not doing them, when we're in trouble, instead of saying, hey, bud, you're living this out. Let me tell this story of how I saw it. I have a story of a client that I worked with where there was literally a customer service representative in Chicago, and she did something amazing over and above to help out this customer, like invited her over for Seder dinner because she was new to the area and didn't have any family there, like just over and above. And the GM from that area told the story at one of the team meetings. The GM in Los Angeles heard the story, sent a message to that customer service representative saying thank you. And the employee was blown away, right? And that's nothing, right? But that's how we make those connections and really drive, here's who we are as a company and how we treat each other. So all of those things need to be connected.
Yeah. Yeah, and that took all of, 5 minutes to do?
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
But it takes us sharing those stories of people living out the core values so that becomes a part of who we are as a company.
Yeah. Awesome example. All right, so that was number 3.
No, that was actually 4.
That was actually number 4. That was it. Yeah, that was. Okay. So I promise we'll get to 2020 insights.
That's okay.
Here soon. But I want to make kind of a linear progression. Because you were in the startup world, and you left the startup world to become an executive coach. And maybe I'm going off track, but if I'm putting the pieces together, I'm guessing that you left the startup world, became an executive coach, and learned some things along the way that kind of brought you back into the startup world, which actually brought you back into starting 2020 Insights. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. So let's kind of take that path and tell us how leaving the startup world, becoming an executive coach, learning those lessons brought you back into 2020 Insights, and then we'll talk about 2020 Insights and what that's all about.
Sure. So the progression of my career, I was fortunate enough to work in technology, right? So at big tech companies at the start of the internet, and went through and, worked at a company, we sold it or merged or acquired other companies. And the very last company I was at a early stage hardware technology company. And I was the COO. We went through 4 CEOs in 5 years. And I was like, I'm done with you investors. Like, you guys are crazy. Right. There were literally people who we had laid off 3 times. They got laid off, came back, got laid off, came back. And so I just I'm stepping away. And went and started just doing some really fun consulting on big technology projects, and decided that I wanted to learn how to be a coach and have those skills to be able to do the strategic planning and work with companies to do that. So did that, jumped in, and what I found in that work, and you're exactly right, was I was doing all this great strategy work with companies, and it was never connected to the bottom line, what employees were doing, right? So we'd bring out the strategic plan once a quarter, say, here's how we're doing, share it with everybody. Then it would go back inside the executive team office, and it wouldn't come back out again until the beginning of the next quarter. And people, they were like, okay, this is nice. I get free breakfast. We talk about it, and then they go back to their job. And it was never connected. And so for me, it was then, okay, we got to bring all these pieces together. If companies are going to make informed decisions, you have to have the business and all of the metrics that we use to measure success. You have to have the people and all the metrics that we use to measure success. And you have to measure the culture, because that's sort of the thing that ties it all together. And if you're not looking at those 3 pieces together, you're probably not getting the whole picture of data when you're making decisions about things. And so 2020 Insights really came out of sort of both sides of those worlds and going, okay, my last hurrah, I'm going to do something that I believe can change the world. I want everybody to go to work every single day and to have a job that they love. There is no reason why every employee can't love their job. It's about companies stepping up, but it's also about us asking the right questions. Does the company that I work for have the same values as I do? And if they don't, why wouldn't I go find one that does? So this, right. The pandemic has brought that out for people in I think a good way. But up until then, it was still always up to the employer, and that's changing. I mean, it's changing with the employees that we have. They're asking for more. So for me, it was just a natural progression to go back to, okay, how do I bring all these pieces of things together? How do I make a difference in the world? Because I can do that.
Awesome. I think you are right on. I think the pandemic had a lot to do with it. I just think as the generations come, I think they have something to do with it as well. Mm-hmm. But now we're at that point. Tell us about 2020 Insights and what exactly you do and how you bring that to the world.
So 2 ways. We start with technology, right? There has to be an easy way to pull all these pieces together so that people can see what they're doing and how things are connected. So we have a software platform called Insights, and it's similar to other things that people have seen, but what makes us different is that we actually look at business results, we look at people results, and we look at culture in a way that employees have a voice. So it's not just the manager saying, here's how I think you're doing. The employee self-evaluates. We layer on top of that business metrics, right? And we can look at behavior. So for us, it's about bringing all of those pieces together. And then on top of that, if companies want to, we'll come in and consult them on how to be better at this culture stuff and how to bring these business pieces together. And how is equity and inclusion affected by transparency? Well, if you and I have the same job and I can literally see that your job responsibilities are the same as mine and your goals are the same as mine because we have the exact same job, I'm crowdsourcing equity, in fact, right? Because everybody can see it. And when everyone's included on the strategy of the company and where we're going, because I see it all the time, and I'm responsible for saying, here's how the work that I do connects to the strategy of the company, it brings all those pieces together. So we use technology to do what technology does best, which is all that work in the background, gives us all the data, tells me, do I have a manager who's treating 20-year-olds differently than they're treating 40-year-olds, right? Just by looking at how they do things. So that you and I have the time to do this, but we can talk to each other about what's important. And we give you all the prompts so that you can be on the people side of things, the human being that brings out that best part of employees. So for me, it's about just making it easy for companies and teaching them in a way that people will actually do it. That's the other part of the thing is, we all have 100 apps on our phones. How many of them do we actually use all the time? So it's about doing something in a way that people will actually do it, because we have all this coming at us all the time. And so how do we make sure that we're easy to use and straightforward? And that's what we're doing.
Yeah. And I was looking at your website just this morning a little bit. And one thing that I really liked was it kind of gets rid of that once a year evaluation and just makes it, and that's actually something that we have been talking about and gotten rid of here at Xfusion, because the once a year evaluation is not fair to the employer. It's not fair to the employee. It puts a lot of stress on everybody, and the employee, they have to try and, I guess, put their best foot forward and almost falsely make themselves shine. Whereas if you do the one-on-ones throughout the entire year, which is what we do, and you just talk to your supervisor, once or twice a week, and you just kind of get those weekly evaluations, then once that yearly evaluation comes, like, there's no stress. You already know exactly what your supervisor's thinking. Your supervisor knows exactly what you've been doing. And, if you've had mess ups during the year, they've already been taken care of. If you've been doing really well, you've already been praised. And there's no secrets. There's no, you don't have to try and make yourself look good. You don't have to try and cover anything up. And it's just stress free. And that's one of those things that I really liked. I'm like, man, these guys are aligned with what we've been trying to do. And you put it really well with how we've been trying to, I guess, enunciate it with our employees. I'm like, she's doing it. It's awesome.
So, and two things about that, Bud. One is, we know that the earlier an employee or a manager identifies something as not on track, right? for whatever reason, and usually it's one of three reasons, because we don't have the skills to do what we've been asked to do, we don't have the tools that we need to do what we've been asked to do, or we're waiting on somebody else to get something done and it's not getting done. The earlier we identify that, whether it's the employee or the manager, the more likely we are to turn that around and get it back on track. Mm-hmm. So we want people to say something is behind, because that gives them the opportunity to fix it. And at the end of the year, or the end of our tenure with a company, don't you want sort of a record of all the things that you've accomplished? I was just on the call yesterday with a client, and the employee was saying, the manager was saying, yeah, I've done all this stuff, but I don't have time. And I said, Pete, we got to get a record of all this that you've accomplished. Don't let that go, right? Think of this as an investment in yourself to keep track of how much you've accomplished this year. If for no other reason, you're not going to remember it. You're just not. Mm-hmm. And so I love that you're having those conversations, but I think that's so important. And I want somebody to make sure that they write it down and it doesn't go away, because I want people to know what you've done this year.
Yeah, so we just think it's a much better way to do things. Transparency. Well, transparency is bliss, I guess. Transparency is the best way to go. And that's how Jim and David, my co-founders, started this, and that's how we just want to make sure that everything goes. So I think you're right on track. Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. Check out the website for sure. So I saw a quote that you put on your thread about 5 months ago, and it really caught my eye. It said, we are not a team because we work together. We are a team because we respect, trust, and care for each other. There's some people on our team, and they're like, I love this team. We are a family. And I'm like, yeah, we treat each other like family, but we're not. We're very careful to say we're not a family, and that's kind of counterintuitive to a lot of people. But with family, there's people in your family eventually and always that are just hard and are trouble, and you can't get rid of, right? Mm-hmm. But team works together. Team, you exactly respect, trust, and care for each other. But if there's somebody on your team that doesn't fit your culture, that is kind of a bad apple, you can get rid of. And that's how we go about our business, right? Like if there's somebody on our team that's a cancer, then we have to get rid of them. Mm-hmm. And we keep the ones that fit our culture, and we have to get rid of the ones that don't. And that's how we have to go about business, unfortunately. But we have a very, very good team, and we treat them like family, but we are a team in that sense. And so, we love the fact that our team members are like, we love our family, but we're very careful when we use that language. Mm-hmm. So, I wonder what your thoughts are on that.
I'm glad to hear that. I think, when I first learned how to coach companies on how to come up with their core values, there were two things. There's more than two, but the two that stand out for me is that your core values have to be something that you are willing to take a financial hit to uphold, which means, for example, if you have a salesperson who is your best salesperson, but they don't live up your core values, you are willing to let them go, right? Because mm-hmm. they don't live them out. And you're willing to fire an offender, right? It's something that we believe that strongly in. And I think when you think about that, the complaint I get the most often is that the people at the very senior level of the company are the worst offenders of core values. And we've seen that, right? In lots of cases where people have been fired for very egregious things. But what happened up until then? Like, why were we not paying attention to it? So I think to have those tenets in place, and they're really covenants of who we are, and hold everybody accountable to them, that's when you start to see really the difference and the change in the organization.
Yeah. Yeah, it's tough, but it's necessary. Mm-hmm. So as an example, we were out of town visiting a potential client, and it would have been our biggest client ever. And something just seemed off, but we couldn't find it. Right. And then long story short, and without going into too much detail, we figured out that the person that we were going after was a bad actor, right?
Oh, interesting.
But it was, this one client would have been over 40% of our total clientele. We had to walk away.
Yep.
We just had to walk away.
And you know this, Bud. It's as much about what you say no to as what you say yes to.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and people was that a hard decision? We're like, no. Well, it really wasn't.
Good for you, right?
It really wasn't. Yeah. So, all right. We have lots to go over still. Lots of things to talk about. So, community, we talk about community, and when we say community, people think, the community that you live in, or your community of church, or your community of friends. Very rarely do we think about your community of work, or the community kind of at large, right? So, let's talk about the community at large here for a little bit. You do lots of work with your community at large. So let's talk about some of that with your work with the entrepreneurs, sorry, in Uganda. We'll also talk about CEO and women leaders of the world, but let's start with Uganda. Tell us what you're doing over there and how that relates to your larger community.
Yeah, so about 6 years ago, I was lucky enough to get connected with an organization just outside of Kampala, Uganda, called Fit for Life. And what Fit for Life does is they take about 30 students in each cohort and teach them entrepreneurial skills to start their businesses. The reason that that's important is in Uganda, 70% of their population is under 40.
Wow.
Right? So they have this giant workforce with not enough jobs for everybody. And so what we did was we took, sort of this coaching, building your strategic plan work that I've been doing for years, and created a model from it to teach to students. And literally, Bud, what I love about this is in 3 days, they already had their plans, but we would build their minimum viable product. We would literally in pencil write out their P&L for a year to see if they could even build a profitable business. And they're writing down like what their fixed costs were, what their variable costs were. I have CEOs who couldn't do that. And these guys are so we're building their business plans, and then we're able to fund some of them to get started. So now we have about over 400 people who have been through the program. We've started over 25 companies and have employed over 300 people in those companies that have been started. So you can just watch how things are progressing. That community of people is so near and dear to my heart because they've pulled themselves up. They're not waiting for a big venture capital company to come in and fund them. They're finding the needs within their community that they can fill. that take advantage of the things that they are good for. So Moses, one of my guys, is a perfect example. He literally figured out how to make clean burning charcoal out of leftover sugarcane. Has 10 people employed for him. They use the sun because it's so hot there to dry the charcoal that they briquettes, and then they take it out and they deliver it. And people are on now almost like a subscription to get their charcoal briquettes delivered to their homes to cook over, and it's clean. And it's nice. So those kinds of things. And so for me, what I learned in all this is community is not just the people who are close to me. They're the people who I choose to be in community with. And how do we help each other and really support each other? So while I haven't been there in the last 2 years, we still keep touch over Zoom and FaceTime and make it work. But community is what you decide is you are a part of. And so for us at 2020 Insights, our goal is we want to do a trip every year where each of our companies that we work with send 1 or 2 people with us to go to Uganda, work with those entrepreneurs, help them start their businesses, and start a very informal way of mentoring and networking. That's what builds the community. Because I have people say to me all the time, Kirsti, can I go to Africa with you? And I'm like, I'm not a tour guide. But specific trips to help people and to use what they're learning from working together with us is amazing, right? That's how you change the world, is you keep it moving forward and helping other people. So super excited about that work, and hopefully, we'll get past all the COVID stuff and be able to travel again and make that happen.
Right. And there's no reason that we can't in this day and age and with our technology, make the world so much smaller.
Yep.
Right. So kind of going back on how you started that, just out of curiosity, why is 70% of the people over there under 40? Is it because of sickness? Is it why is that so young, such a young population?
2 reasons in Uganda. One is because they lost 2 generations of people to AIDS.
Oh, okay.
And in Idi Amin,
okay.
Political strife.
Yeah. Okay. So then keeping on that community, you are an activator with SheEO. I've never heard of SheEO before I was doing research on you. Tell us a little bit about SheEO and what exactly that is.
SheEO is an international organization that supports women entrepreneurs all over the world in getting their businesses started. And their funding model is, there are lots of us all over the world who literally donate $50 a month that goes into a fund that is then used to help women start their businesses. It's a very grassroots way to support women entrepreneurs all over the world in starting their businesses. And for me, because I've seen what a difference even $50 a month can make, it's important to continue to support people who are making the world a better place. And so it's an amazing network, and they're doing really good work. So for me, it just spoke to my heart.
Nice. And we'll make sure when we make our landing page to have a spot for everything that we're talking about on the landing page here. But that's great. Is there a way for people to get signed up to have you look at them, or
so you'll see.
You know what I'm saying?
There's they do great events. They teach people how to pitch. They teach them how to put their business together so that they have events a couple times a year, depending on what region you're in. So typically it's North America. Actually, United States and Canada do it separately, and then a big group of people out of Australia. And they have pitch events at different times during the year. And all the information is on their website about how that works.
Great. And then that kind of goes into the next one that you're part of, which is Women Leaders of the World. Again, you're a fellow of Women Leaders of the World. That's another one that I wasn't privy to until I started doing some research on you. So tell us a little bit about that one as well.
So a very similar organization called How Women Lead. They're much more based here in the San Francisco Bay Area, but they have people all over the world that are a part of them. And they have a cohort that starts twice a year that I'm a part of, that I started in the spring. And it's really a program designed to get you to think really big about the world's problems and what would you do to resolve them. And I went into it, interestingly enough, last spring, thinking that the work that I wanted to do was with middle school students, because I have a middle school outside of Colorado that I was talking to, and teaching them the same principles that we're using with companies, so that students are held accountable to living out the core values of the school, but they would actually take agency for their own learning. So instead of waiting for the teacher to give them a grade, they own the rubric and define what success looks like, and then have a voice in, here's how I'm doing. So that you're really teaching kids at an early stage how to own their education instead of waiting for their parents or their teacher to do it. And middle school kids are just excited enough to get their hands dirty. They're not quite high schoolers yet. And it seemed like a great program, and it still is, I think. And the program encouraged me to think really big. And literally said, okay, Kirsti, if you were really going to change the world, what would you do? So I'm just going to put this out there in the universe and tell you, I want to make our communities better. And I believe that if we have law enforcement agencies and the communities that they support with the same core values of creating great communities for us to live in, we can get through to the problems that we've had in communities where law enforcement has not lived up to that. And so there is a project being run out of Georgetown Law School called ABLE. It's ABLE stands for Active Bystandership in Law Enforcement. It's been around for only about a year and a half. It started with the Metro DC Police Department and the New Orleans Police Department in conjunction with Georgetown. And they are teaching law enforcement officers active bystandership skills, so that in the case of something like George Floyd, somebody would have stepped up. And for me, what we bring to that, what we can lend to that work, is a way to easily keep track of how law enforcement is living that out, and bring transparency to it, at least just inside of a department to start with, to say, here's how we're doing, right? Because changing all of the way that we do things is great, but unless we keep track, it's to our earlier conversation, we can't assume that change is going to be affected. And so we need an easy way to ensure that we're keeping track, that the law enforcement personnel have a way to do it for themselves instead of somebody doing it to them, and gives them a voice in what's going on. So that's what I'm really working to get with Women Leaders of the World, is to really be a part of that project and help make communities great places, not only for the people that live there, but the people who work there and support them. I don't believe that any police officer wants to do bad things. I just don't believe it.
Right.
And so we've got to help get over this hump that we've been in for so long in this country, and give people the skills that they need to do something different, and then help them keep track of that so that we can really affect that change.
Nice. I think that's great. So that's ABLE.
Yeah.
I agree with what you're saying, with the change, and a systemic change can't happen from outside forces being forced upon, right? It has to happen from within. And like we were talking about earlier, the constant talks and transparency from within, and those changes are not going to happen in a week or a month or a year, right? It's going to take some time for changes to occur and happen. And it's not going to happen, the countrywide. Like, it's going to happen a precinct at a time. So I think everybody needs to realize how change has to happen for it to occur correctly. And patience is going to be needed. Mm-hmm. And I think that change can happen. I mean, change happens all the time, right?
Yes.
I mean, the only thing constant is change.
Right.
So, no, I think that's great. You have so much going on. You're an entrepreneur, right? You're a founder, you're a business owner. You have so much going on outside of that. How do you keep your work-life balance going? Do you have a work-life balance? How do you keep that? How do you keep that in a good state?
Yeah. So balance doesn't mean 50-50, right?
No.
So there's times, right, when I'm just doing a lot of work.
Mm-hmm.
I got to tell you, bud, for me, the magic is getting enough sleep. It really is. I've been reading, I just read the McKinsey report on women in the work world in 2021. And so much of it is about literally taking care of your body physically, what it needs, whether it's how we feed it or how we get enough exercise or we rest. And I'm at a place in my life where literally I've chosen to do the work that brings me so much joy. I tell people, you do the Marie Kondo thing, right? Does this job bring me joy? Right? Do these people that I work with bring me joy, right? That's, for me, I had to find that, right? What are the things, who are the people that I want to work with? What are the projects that I work on? Who are the clients that I work with? Every single one of my clients that I'm working with today, I absolutely adore. And it's because I have said no to the things that, to your point earlier, aren't a good match. And I think that's how I find that balance. So Fridays, I try and get done by 11 so that I feel like, okay, Friday afternoons, what am I going to do? Right? It's just about making sure that I've literally got that planned on my calendar and blocked out so nothing can come in and disturb it.
Nice. Yeah, I oftentimes have trouble with the work-life balance thing.
Yeah, it's hard.
Working from home, I just glanced over and saw my bed. My bed is right over there in my room, in my workspace. It's so if I don't go down and get breakfast, at times, I wake up, come over here, and sometimes I don't even leave my room until 11 or 12 in the morning. And if there's things to be done, then sometimes I work way too long. It's gotten better. My wife made sure that I knew that my work-life balance was out of whack. And so the last month or so, it's gotten better. But this was my first venture into this kind of work. And as you said, taking care of the body, like all my work before this was physical. And this is my first time ever just sitting down for work. And I came to the realization just last week, like I've been sick more this last month than I ever have in my entire life. But I haven't worked out. I haven't just been out working physically. I'm like, that's got to have something to do with it. Like I'm just not taking care of my body.
But I would honestly tell you, don't take a vacation right now. Because if you do, you're going to get sick. Your body's going to go, hello, you're taking time off. Take care of me. Now I'm going to be sick. Right. So really, you're absolutely right. And it is a big flag in front of all of us. I never wore a watch until I got my Apple Watch, which for the only thing that I love that it does is it reminds me to stand up. Yeah. So whatever it takes, right? We have to be thoughtful about how we're bringing our best selves, and we can't bring our best selves if our mind and our body and our soul are not taken care of.
So, and I've got, do you have children? Are you a mom?
I do. They're all grown up, but yes.
So did you apply the same principles to your children as you do to kind of the work principles that you were coaching and now that you bring to your employees or to the clients with 2020 Insights? Is that how you brought up your kids as well?
That's a great question. I'm wondering what they would say. I think yes, in a different way. So for us, it was always the conversations about what does it mean to be a good person, right? Sure. And I like to think that those were our core values. And community was always something that they were a part of with me and I with them. And looking at each of them for their unique contributions, right? Trying to just understand who they were and support them that way. It's hard when you're a parent, right? You have a lot of things that you're juggling. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, how do people do this all the time, right? With a full-time career and family and all the stuff that kids have going on. I find that now more than ever, I want to make sure that anybody that I'm working together with is not forgetting how important that is to just do that family thing. And especially with all the pandemic stuff, even that much more important, I think.
Yeah. So I have five children.
Congratulations.
22. Thanks. I have one that's 22 and he's now a high school teacher. One that's, she'll be 20 next month. One that's 16 today.
Happy birthday.
One that's 13, and then one that's 7. So I kind of have the whole gamut.
You do have the whole gamut.
Yeah. And I'll tell you what, it's when the 22-year-old was 7, it's a completely different world than what it is now. And I can't believe how different it is bringing up a 7-year-old now than it was, 15 years ago.
The technology alone. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that has been a complete game changer. But we're the same way. Like there's a lot of things that we could do, but we just want to make sure they're good people, and they're each of them. And you hear parents say this all the time, but we have 5 and they're completely different. Every single one of them, you know, it's just amazing. But we just want to make sure they're good people. And my 19-year-old girl and my 16-year-old girl, like they couldn't be any further apart. My 19-year-old, when she was 16, when she played softball and she was having a down game, all I had to do was be like, baby, you are the prettiest girl on the team. And she would perk up and she would start doing, well, like that's all she needed. My 16-year-old, like if she's not doing well, I'd be like, you need to pull your head out of your butt and get in the game. Like, stop being stupid and play your game. You know how to do this. They're just so, it's crazy.
Yeah.
It's weird.
And that, again, right? That's that scene for their unique contributions, right? and how do you support them for who they are? Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that you know that difference, bud.
Yeah. And my 19-year-old, like she doesn't want anything to do with college. She just wants to get married and be a mom. And my 16-year-old, she wants to be a pediatrician, and she's just a go-getter. Like, so it's awesome.
Love
it's awesome.
I love it.
So can you think of any pursuit that in hindsight you realized that you chased too long, and kind of what were the consequences of that? And if not, that's fine.
Yeah, I think I think sticking with something because I felt like I had an obligation to it, versus again thinking about what makes me happy, even if it meant it cost me money to get out of it. That money thing is not nearly as important as we think it is, and we will always find a way to do something else to make up for it. And I regret staying in something for too long because I felt like I had so much invested that I couldn't get out, and I should have. Yeah.
Yep.
And
that was the oil field for me.
There you go. I think, again, that's why that lesson of what brings me joy and being brave enough to take sort of that quantum leap when you need to. Who are the people around you that are going to help you get through that, right? And every time I've taken that quantum leap, I'm always so much happier, but it is so scary to do. Like, and it just, how do you find your tribe around you that's going to be there for you? But also, like, not push you, but give you a shove.
Right.
To take it.
Right. A loving shove.
That's
loving
right.
Shove.
Yeah.
Yes. All right. Well, you've been extremely gracious, and I've loved this conversation. I think we could go on for quite a while, but we should probably land this plane here. So I've got a couple more questions, things I ask every single person that's on this show. So the first one is, what advice would you give to founders or soon-to-be founders that are going to watch this show?
My advice would be clear on who you are and what you really are trying to make happen. I think there's lots of reasons to found a new business, to be an entrepreneur, but until you're clear about who you are, it will be confusing to everyone because you're going to be all over the place. So the sooner you decide that and make it clear to everyone who's on the team, and it's how you hire and it's how you fire, the easier it is for everybody.
Nice. Good advice. I like that. And then, what is the best way for our viewers to get in touch with you if they would like to?
Okay, first of all, I'm the only Kirsti Tcherkoyan on LinkedIn, so
yes,
there are
it is
other
very
Kirstis,
easy to find you.
but they're not very hard. And our website is 2020, so 2020 insights with an S.net.
Nice. Kirsti, it was very nice talking to you, and I had a lot of fun. I hope our viewers have as much fun as I did. Thank you for being on the show.
Yeah, it's been great for me. Thank you.
All right. You have a good day.
You as well. Thanks.